system. Because I'm advocating a different, capitalism, the capitalists run the economy and they control the political system and the media and the educational system. And a communist system, another class of people, working class people, would take over. And I don't mean just factory workers, I don't mean just truck drivers, I mean engineers, designers, plant managers, the people that make our economy go. If they took control of it, they wouldn't organize the economy according to profit. They would organize it to benefit society. They would make rational decisions like, you know what, your students, go to school, you don't have to work on your studies. You know what, in the city of Los Angeles, 40,000 homeless people and 200,000 empty units. In any rational society, they go, hey, homeless guy, empty units. That would never happen in a capitalist system because it violates private property, which is far more sacred than human life. So if you're talking about within the context of a capitalist system, I think the history is really clear that there's no correlation between high taxes and economic wreck and ruin or low taxes and prosperity. The income tax, as we know it in this country, was introduced in the 1913, and every year the economy boomed until the end of World War I. And then you had a series of anti-tax presidents, so there were 3 tax cuts in the 20s. That didn't prevent the Great Depression, the worst economic collapse in this country's history. So when they say, oh, we need to cut taxes to stimulate the economy, they're not being honest. That's not true. And then after the Depression, Roosevelt introduced some more tax increases. By the 1950s, you must know this, the highest marginal tax rate this country's ever had, over 90% for the top 1 percentile. What was the economy like in the 50s? It was booming. I mean, you can scream whatever you want about how it's so unfair to tax the wealthy. It did not have a detrimental effect on the economy. And it was John Kennedy. You think he's such a liberal. The guy's a billionaire, right? The Kennedy family, they were the ones that introduced tax break and a series of tax breaks. The one example they love to cite is Ronald Reagan. He cut taxes and look what happened to the economy. But what they always fail to mention, because I think these anti-tax people are fundamentally dishonest, is while he did cut taxes, he also closed tax loopholes. The combination of the two of them meant the highest peacetime tax increase in American history. Okay. And you see with, you gotta stop now?
Yeah, we pass it.
I could keep going. But my point is, cutting taxes doesn't stimulate the economy any more than raising it hurts it. That's a bunch of
Okay, well, so I am totally in favor of closing loopholes, which is why I would be in favor of a flat tax of, say, 20%. How does that sound? We give to our churches 10%. Should we give to the government more than that? So yes, absolutely. The tax, the federal income tax was introduced in 1913, and it was no other than the New York Times, which said that this is going to be a disaster because once men have got into the habit of helping them to other people's property, they cannot easily be cured of it. That tax was supposed to be hitting, of course, it's always going to be the 1%, the 1 or 2%, and at that time, the top tax rates were between 1 and 7%, okay? 2 years later, they doubled that, and it was now going to be to a larger percent. Then, on the eve of World War I, they expanded it, they tripled the top tax rates, and they went from 1 to 7% to 20% to 60%, and yes, to 90%.
But how did it affect the economy?
Well,
tax
the three greatest times of economic growth were in the 20s, were in the 50s and 60s, after the Kennedy tax cuts, and then in the 80s, after the Reagan tax cuts. Now, do you care about making other people less rich? Does that really make you feel better? Do you care about getting a job? Do you care about having businesses? Do you care about having products that improve your quality of life and give many people the experience of wealth? Or do you care? I don't personally, but if you care so much about social services, then maybe you would care about having more revenues. From the time that the federal income tax was introduced until the 90s, the last that I saw the data, when the tax rate went from 90%, and then Kennedy brought it down, and then Reagan brought it down, and then it was brought back up. One thing I want you to keep in mind, the size of the economy grew and shrank, and that changed. That was a dynamic. I'll tell you one thing that never changed, is what was the percentage of revenue that the government was taking as a percentage of the economy. It never rose, it bumped around, always around 19%. If you want more money for the military or for government services or guaranteed income or anything, the only thing you should be thinking about is how to grow this economy. You'll get 19% of a small economy versus 19% of a larger economy. I would say that would be a better deal. And so you should really think about what is incentivizing people to save and to invest in businesses and what's not. And to me, that clearly means lower tax rate, flat tax rate, visible tax rate, and more incentives for people to save and invest.
Thank you.
You know, there's a fundamental disagreement that we have. She thinks that people that make a lot of money have worked for it and they earn it and it's theirs.
I certainly have. Thank you.
Bill Gates is worth $160 billion, which is more than the gross domestic product of Croatia. You seriously think that that guy produces more wealth than the entire nation? Yeah, because you've drank the Kool-Aid. You think that Bill Gates, seriously, think about it for a minute. You think he could go to Croatia and plow the fields and drive the trucks and teach the kids as the collective effort of millions of people? What we really have is the same thing with the slave owners. Is that the slave owners lived in the big house and they said, the reason I'm here is because I am the real wealth creator. We know that's a lie. We know it was the slaves that produced the wealth. They were the ones that plowed and tended the fields and harvested the fields. And the reason we know that is because they don't have slavery anymore in the South. And they still grow tobacco. They still grow rice. They still harvest cotton. It's the most fundamental of truths, that it is labor that really produces value. And don't take my word for it. Read Adam Smith. That's what he said.
Read Adam Smith.
There's a very long pedigree with the labor theory of value that gets swept under the rug because this side of the aisle doesn't want to talk about the fact that they mobilize workers to make money out of them, including Ecuadorian workers in Dole that get paid like $5 a day. They make money off of those workers. This is the painful reality.
And who was it that went into Ecuador and went into all of those countries and created the roads, and created the hospitals?
That's not fair. Yeah, Dole was doing them a great favor.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like the slave owner, just like the slave. I'm doing the slave a favor.
Time.
The definition of slavery is being forced to work against your consent. How about me for 50% of the year? That's slavery.
Okay, let's respect the time. Okay.
I mean, seriously, you know, the labor theory of value was first articulated by Benjamin Franklin. Adam Smith agreed with him on this. Some really brilliant individuals, David Ricardo, Malthus. The only reason that it ever got in trouble is because Karl Marx said, you know what, I agree with all of them. And if it's workers that produce the wealth of this world, they should control it. And this is what she doesn't like.
Okay.
I think the people that produce the wealth should control their own wealth.
Okay.
I know, that's a radical idea. And you know that not only her, but these guys hire people to make money out of them. The way they make money out of them is they get workers to produce more value than their wages. That's the only reason.
Let's jump it over to the next question. Okay, so in the same topic, and question goes for you.
Sure.
So do you believe rising taxes for the top 1%?
Absolutely. I think that we should tax them out of existence. But, you know, I don't believe, I do. I mean, I don't believe in a completely equal income structure. I'm a craftsman. I used to be a journeyman carpenter. I respect that kind of stuff. I know that you start at the bottom and then you work your way up. But the fact that this rarefied, what is it now, 80 individuals control half of the world's gross domestic product? Is something like that? You know, is it? What?
8.
Is it 8 now?
Yes.
I mean, if everybody else is fat and happy, okay, fine. But look at the human misery level, the death and destruction, the malnourishment. I go to Mexico. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting what goes on down. A wealthy country. It's a proven money maker for any number of capitalists all over the world. Everybody and their brother, since Hernan Cortez, has wanted to get their grubby little hands on that country. And Mexicans produce tremendous wealth in Mexico, and they come here. I mean, without Mexican labor, what happens to California agriculture? What happens to California industries? What happens to the ports? What happens to the service? It all goes away, and immigrant Mexican labor gets paid like shit. And then on the other side of it, the people that own these industries, do they even work? Do the Waltons work? You seriously think that they punch a time clock? You know, and when somebody says about, you know, like Gates or Steve Jobs, well, no, they're the innovators. You know, and the comedian Bill Burr famously said, I don't think that Jobs really made that iPhone. I think he had a room full of nerds, and he said, I want all my tunes on that tomorrow. That's the reality. So I think we should tax much more. And by the way, if you don't believe in tax at all, Soviet Union didn't tax anybody. That's true, there was no tax in the Soviet Union.
Thank you.
Just a little fun fact.
Once we, yes, because there was no income to tax.
Want to see the polls? I have the
No, you know,
polls.
of course, there's always going to be polls.
Yeah, let's just-
You know, there's always going to be polls.
Don't
that
let
people are
evidence
going
get in
to
the
say-
way.
No, polls are opinions.
Fair
Those
enough.
are opinions. So could you maybe get a room of 10 people to say, hey, do you think we can get a majority of us to say that we're going to take the wealth of this person and redistribute it to the rest of us? Yeah, but that's what we call taxation without representation. And so if you can tax away the wealth of the 1%, of course you're going to have that. But that is not what our founders envisioned. And if you also want to take a look at some of the experience of North Korea,
What are you going at with this? I don't know.
because you want to tax the 1% out of existence?
I do not defend
And
North
then-
Korea.
and
I do
then-
not
and then
support
what-
North Korea.
Oh, okay, what about Venezuela?
Even I hate Venezuela. What are you talking about?
You know,
See, this
were they
is-
just not properly implementing socialism?
Since you went down this road, you know, you guys should know that there's a huge difference between the word and the deed. You know, just because North Korea calls itself a communist country, is that really true? The name of North Korea is the Democratic Workers' Republic of North Korea. Does anybody in this room think North Korea is democratic? No. You know, you have to get beyond this terminology. If socialism is defined simply by the word socialism, then Otto von Bismarck was a socialist. The Chancellor of Germany, because he nationalized the railroads. This makes no sense at all. I mean, I'm asking you to up it a level and understand that there's a huge difference between terminology and the really existing situation on the ground. In the case of Venezuela, the Venezuelan ruling elites wanted to nationalize that oil back in the 1970s and 80s, so don't give me that crap. They did it for their own selfish reasons. It had nothing to do with socialism. And if we're going to agree that these terminologies mean anything, I mean, you're all over the map. German Democratic Republic, that was East Germany. You really think that that was democratic?
And do you really think that Hitler's so...
He was not a
fascist?
socialist.
Well,
Ask Henry Ford. Henry Ford loved Hitler.
Socialist Party.
That's what you're saying, is that if just because the terminology is there, that makes it so. And I disagree. I would contend that there were many Southern slave owners that they were in the Democratic Party, but you know what? They weren't Democrats. Big revelation there. So what I'm asking you to do is not look at the terminology. Look at the really existing conditions on the ground floor. You know what North Korea really is?
Okay.
It's a hereditary monarchy. That's what it really is. Are we on number 3?
Well, no, I mean,
That's not
okay,
socialism.
But if
That's
you
what
have talked to people that have escaped from North Korea, they were not even allowed to consider having private property. If you were trying to make any kind of living for your family, you had to do it by smuggling and by being on the black market.
But we already took, it's not a socialist country.
When you were to escape from North Korea, that you had no idea that self-interest, doing anything selfishly, was so bad that you thought, oh, well, these people from China, they just want to help us. They just want to help us escape this country. They didn't ever think, well, wait a second. What's in it for them? What's in it for me? You know, how are we having this trade here? And as a result, they got, you know, sold into human trafficking.
So socialism is also human trafficking. I have 2 polls, and you know, just take it under consideration, right? Just think about it. This is a poll from a referendum in the Soviet Union in 1991, in which over 75% of the people of the Soviet Union did not want to break the Soviet Union up. You could take it or leave it. It was labeled a very legitimate poll. This is Gallup. So it's an American polling company, must be right. And they polled people in 2013, and the vast majority of the former Soviet Union wants to go back to the old system. I don't even support the Soviet Union. But let's get the facts down here. Soviet Union is an absolute mess right. I mean, Russia is a mess right now since the collapse, and she seems to think it was better off when in the old system where I lived there for a year. And by the way, you're wrong about the private business part. In the Soviet Union, you could own your own business. Many people did. But what they didn't let you do is own the entire petrochemical industry. Now, you can't do that, comrade. You can have shock. But you can't own entire refining industry of Soviet Union. So here's the two polls. I'll just pass them around for you to check out. You know, it's on the second page.
We'll jump to the next topic right after this. How are you feeling? Doing good? Yeah? It's a lot hot here, huh? Feeling too hot, right? Yeah.
Gets my blood boiling.
Same. Alright. Okay, so now that we're talking about economy, let's go into healthcare. Another fun topic, right?
Oh yeah.
Healthcare?
Uncontroversial.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, the question goes for you. Silence. And before anything, leave the booing and cheering towards the end of the event. Jennifer,
It's okay. It's not the first time Libby said it was full of shit.
should the government decide how and when do citizens get healthcare?
No, I think that people should